welcome to episode 9 of the Sheffield Hopcast. We are at Shakespeare's. Now, it's a bit of an interesting episode for us because there's a few firsts. It's the first time that myself, Adam and Laura have met for tea before we've recorded, and we've had 3 beers apiece. And it's the first time that Sean has not been driving, so he's had about 8 pints and he's smashed, aren't you, mate?
I'm absolutely gone, yeah, and I've had a bag of nuts for my tea, and I'll be slurring all night. Lies.
No, you've had, was it one beer?
I've had 1 pint.
But you do normally have like the smallest bit of the taster.
I never drink
all
and
of us.
drive, yeah, I just to remind people, yeah, I have one mouthful of each beer, and amazingly can report back clinically as to how I like it.
We'll talk about the theme in a minute. Let's do our beer of the month first. So, Sean seems to have already said hello. I'll come to you first then. What is your beer of the month?
It's very easy. This is the first time ever that I've thought about the beer of the month during the month rather than 10 minutes before we go live on recording. And another one from our little holidays. Me and Deb were in London about 3 weeks ago at Euston Tap. And one of my favourite beers to have had from a bottle before was on a keg in Siren Brewery, Uncle's Esther, a citrus sour braggot, 10%, drinks about 5%, and balance is what that beer is all about. Sourness, sweetness from the honey, citrus in there, it's really fantastic. I think it's a perfection there for my palate.
Wow.
It probably is, and a top 5 beer for me of all time.
That's saying something.
Mm-hmm. Adam weren't keen on it, but
I liked it. I took one on advice and enjoyed it, shared it. It was a good beer, but I think the honey bit just kind of just.
I'm not
Not top 5 for you.
I don't like honey.
No.
I love that beer.
I'd recommend it to people, but it just wasn't really my thing. My beer of the month, I only had 2 nights ago, I think, and considering how much
September.
What?
That's September then.
It's been in the last month. No one said it was the August.
You can't pull people up on months, can you, Mister? We started recording in May.
Well,
we'll explain, for anyone that doesn't understand that, we'll explain that a little bit later on.
So, considering we've had like Funk Fest, which we had some amazing beers at, Peakender, again, amazing beers, but I thought this one was quite kind of slightly topical because it brings it back to the West Coast IPA, which me and Sean were always shouting about months ago, and it's from Torside.
Woo!
Which is and it's a one-way ticket to Pluto, and it's called a thoroughly West Coast IPA, 6.8%, 500ml bottles. Thoroughly, yeah.
That's a word that's not used as much as it should, isn't it?
It's not
thoroughly.
Thoroughly.
Was it thoroughly good beer?
It was thoroughly good, yeah. It was thoroughly West Coast and thoroughly hoppy. Really bitter. Yeah. It's really like I was really pleased that it was in a 500ml bottle as well. Because you get that second
to go. You got
second pour, yeah.
Keep that head fresh.
Yeah, there were no murky mess, just nice and.
They're one of the best value breweries, aren't they, Torside?
I don't buy that, mate.
Everything they do is in generally like a lot of stuff's in big bottles, and the pricing is really good.
Well, there was 1 bottle left on your shelf, and I saw you yesterday morning.
Adam encouraged me to take that bottle, but a customer took the bottle about an hour, 2 hours later.
Did you tell them that it'd been
so
recommended?
I did tell them that I was going to take that bottle to make them feel guilty.
And charge them an extra.
No, I said there's another one in the warehouse. I softened up, but there wasn't.
I did actually have another beer that I did have. I don't not even one of my favourites.
Your second beer?
No, it's not a favourite, but just that are we getting a turn to the West Coast again because Cloudwater have done their first West Coast IPA, which I had this month.
On keg, was it?
It was nice, but again, I think they should stick to what they got.
Was it bitter?
A bit, yeah, it was bitter. Yeah, it was still a bit cloudy though.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Anyway.
Go on then, Laura.
I'm keeping it local this month, which I think might be my first Sheffield-based beer of the month so far.
It's about time, actually.
It is, isn't it? So it's a beer that I drank at Funk Fest, held at Abbeydale, but it's not an Abbeydale Brewery beer, it's a beer from Lost Industry. And it was their barrel-aged, bretted peach beer. It's been in a white wine barrel. I believe they've done a couple of other variations with other fruits. I don't think any of them have officially been released yet. They're still in the barrel, and the peach was the one that they considered was kind of the one that was ready for the festival. And it was absolutely delicious. It was so nicely balanced. The wine character was really coming through, but wasn't too heavy. I think it's 6%, maybe 6.2, low sixes anyway. I can't remember exactly. But it was just really, really enjoyable. You know, and then beers that you kind of slip a half up, and then you're like, yeah, I want another half of that. So yeah,
I don't know if
really
Jimmy and
enjoyed that
Nathan
one.
or Leslie or anyone listen to this, but please bottle that beer. If they do, that's an appeal. Is that our first ever appeal?
First ever appeal. I
feel
like the creation of Florida Vice as the re-emerging of Tullamine may have been single-handedly down to me.
That was in April, and I don't remember.
Yeah, of course, that didn't happen in podcast. All right, so my beer of the month. I've kind of got two on my shortlist. So I'm going to give an honourable mention. And probably the only reason I'm not picking this as a beer of the month is because I feel like I've already sort of waxed lyrical about it enough. And that is Huckster from Abbeydale, which we talked a lot about on the Hopcast Half Pint.
That was my second best beer of the month.
Which I think was excellent, and which in a lot of ways probably was my beer of the month. It's just because I've kind of talked about it so much. I'm going to go for something, and this is, of all the beers that were available at Peekender, this is in a lot of ways the most boring one to go for, but it was a beer that as the day kind of went on, and particularly on when it was really sunny and I needed just something that wasn't as strong, it was a beer that I just went back to time and time again, and that is Green Mountain from Thornbridge, which is for the style of beer that it is, was it 4 point something? 4.3, but a lot of taste for that percentage. And it, for a lot of, a good 3 or 4 times at Peekender, it was a beer that I went back to just to kind of, keep me going between the really like ridiculously strong stuff and things like that. And every time that I had it, I thought it still tastes as good. It's a really nice beer. They've packed a lot of flavour into a beer.
I'm really looking forward to that going into cans.
Yeah.
I will clear some serious space in the fridge for cans of Green Mountain.
I did the same at Peekend. It kind of, when you were just sort of wanting something just to break things up a bit.
Yeah.
I had a few of those.
It did the job.
Yeah, to be honest, the first time I ever had that, I weren't impressed at all. And I think I've just kind of come round to it. I don't know what it is, whether it's just a preference and taste, or they've changed it. I don't know.
What it is James is cooler than you and thinks it's lovely, and you've just jumped on the bandwagon.
Hashtag trendsetter. Right here. Next week you'll be wearing a baseball cap backwards.
I will
because I've done it this week. Right, so a little bit later on then, we are going to go through our many and varied suggestions for the industry standard name for a plastic glass. Sean is already prematurely celebrating victory. Although to be fair, he did at the Beer World Cup and ended up with both beers in the final. So we'll do that in a bit. First of all, let's talk about the theme then for this week. And I can't even actually remember what it is, so I'll let you guys take the floor at this point.
Despite the sun shining in Sheffield since about 4 o'clock. I hope you would all agree that before that, today was a proper autumnal day. Cool, rainy, very dark, very cloudy, blustery as well. So we've gone for some blustery autumnal darker beers for the first time. So we've got a red ale, we've got an English Trappist beer, which is sort of in the style of a Belgian double. We've gone for a stupidly delicious, a big stout to finish on, and we've gone for a Steel City beer this time, our first Steel City beer to taste as well. We're starting off with a red ale. From a sales point of view, at Beer Central, red ales generally don't sell that well, and it's not a style that tends to perhaps get brewed that often. The more traditional red ales sell better than the hoppier red ales. So we've gone for a Yorkshire beer, a brewery that we like. They're a lovely brewery, high up perched on the Yorkshire Wolds. Wold Brewery. very good at doing gluten-free beers, particularly skilled at that. But we've gone for their Headland Red. It's got, I think, a picture of the old lighthouse at Flamborough on the front. There is definitely some sort of seagull stroke bird on the front of the bottle label as well. This is a maltier style, more traditional, a nice autumnal red ale, and hopefully the sun will just drop in a few moments' time and it'll be nice and dark outside and make it taste even better.
I mean, the more important things at this point, two things I want to ask you about, Sean. One is, you haven't brought your ridiculous bottle opener that doesn't work.
I have brought that. I have brought that. That bottle
and that does
opener
actually... the one that you've got works. That's not your normal one.
The one that I normally use, the wild one, is on my... it's my keyring for the till for the shop, so it's always on me. But I've gone for the... Crazy Donkey Brewery in Santorini bottle opener tonight, which was bought for us by two customers, Mark and Rachel, who'll go to Santorini on holiday. Shout out to them. And so they brought us a nice gift back. It's got an equally secure link to it, though. That's our Beer Central bank account security pad. So one's for the till. This is for our bank account security pad.
We need to give you a few more drinks, and then you'll be willing to open the next bottle with that.
I press that green button there, and then put in the password.
Sean's already talking about.
And it releases all the funds.
We're in. Yes, we're in.
It's like the £1 million Beer Central drop.
So that's great. I've got nearly a half glass of this because I'm not driving, so that's excellent.
I was just thinking when you said that about red ales and not being popular and the modern ones, and I think we might have mentioned it at some point, but like Magic Rock have dropped their red ale, which is
Ratchet, have they?
Well, they dropped it from the car, haven't they?
Yeah.
Right.
So it's not getting released in there.
They're not trendy, are they, red ales?
No.
Anything with red in it. We were talking earlier about generally things with brown in their name and not going to do great. Red also falls into
Malty reds do okay because we get a lot of people coming in saying, I'm buying a beer for a friend or a family member. They really love Hobgoblin. And so trying to then match something up to that, Headland Red and Welbeck Abbey's Red Feather, are two Yorkshire stroke local options, obviously just over the border on the Welbeck, and they match up really nicely to that. So that's something that we suggest to people when they come in asking for Hobgoblin style beers.
Do you sell Hobgoblin?
Hang on, go quiet.
I really wish you could have seen Sean's face there.
I'm not the first person to ask that question, am I?
No, you're not.
You're asked every day.
We're asked. I've not yet had it yet, but we will in the next few weeks get asked if we sell Advocaat as the build up to Christmas begins.
What's Advocaat?
I mean, that's the big snowball.
Yeah. Vonings, Advocaat, eggnoggy style
like
stuff.
Orange juice, check it up or something.
So we get that, but shockingly, a lady came in and bought a bottle of Kellam Easy Rider this morning. What's the date today? 6th of September.
It is the 6th of September.
And I said, are you buying? Is this a nice treat for someone? Because she was saying, I have no idea what I'm on about. She was clearly buying it as a treat. And when I said, is it a nice treat? She says, yes, it's a Christmas present.
Wow.
That's very organised.
I was very polite to her, but then I was just...
I'm really excited for Christmas now.
I mean, October is definitely...
Yes.
It's still 4 months away nearly.
No, October is like, you're on the countdown to
but
Christmas.
we're in early September.
I generally judge it now whereby if the X Factor started on the TV, you're officially in countdown to Christmas.
Can you imagine in mid-October saying it's nearly half term in February? No, you wouldn't.
Well, no, because you've got
That's
Christmas
4
to go
months away.
first. I mean, that's just silly.
So why would you say that?
But how much preparation do you have to do for half term in February?
Well, you just wouldn't say it though.
You know,
because it's a
here's
long
your
way away.
February half term present, and I've got you.
Mid-October.
Are you coming?
I've been looking forward to February.
You don't start saying it.
When's the last time I said to someone, so where are you going for February half term dinner then?
Yeah.
Are you going to the in-laws?
know, but it's a holiday that you would look forward to, but you would never discuss it in October. Hence, you shouldn't discuss Christmas at the end of August or early September.
Right. If you go to America, what
It's
they
a
class
week
as a
off.
holiday.
It's a week off.
It's not. It's a week off.
Shall I tell you what we miss?
It's a week off for school children.
Shall I tell you what we miss? And I discussed this with my sister on the way in this morning. In the Republic of Ireland, they have a bank holiday on the last Monday in October. And that's a nice bridging point. And then Christmas starts after that. In the UK, after the August bank holiday, there's nothing. There's just a bloody empty void waiting for John Lewis and everybody else to smash us with Christmas. It's ridiculous. But thank you to that lady if she's a listener.
I was going to say, I imagine you probably do pretty well out of Christmas.
Oh, we do, yes, but our Christmas begins on the last Monday in October, which is an Irish bank holiday, but is also Belgian Blue release.
Your homework
Belgium,
for next month
Belgian
is
Blue
when
release
does
day.
Christmas officially begin? We have to decide
It never
the
ends
beer
in my
industry
mind. No.
standard for the start.
I'm
No,
kidding.
you can't be having it now.
I'm on the Love Christmas count.
Yes.
When we start
We'll be
pouring
in
the
our
show,
jumpers next month,
I did
okay.
say that there were two questions that I wanted to ask.
Something
And
about
the other
beef
was,
on the back.
sorry, the other was, have you been to Flamborough on holiday before? Because it seems like your kind of place.
Yeah, I've not been on holiday and stayed in Flamborough. I've been to Flamborough whilst on holiday in other resorts on the East Coast. It's beautiful. The lighthouses really do add an extra special aesthetic sort of beauty to the place. The cliffs and everything else is fantastic. Bempton, the RSP reserve is just up the coast as well. Then you hit Filey. So it is my type of place, but I've never stayed there on holiday. Wooltop, Heddle and Red, what is it? Is that 4.3 again? Yeah, 4.3.
I quite like it.
Multi-red.
They were
I feel
known
like-
for doing one of the first gluten-free beers, weren't
Yeah.
they? I can't remember what it was called, but you still see it in
Against the grain.
Against the grain, yeah.
And then Scarborough Fair followed, and they do marmalade porter.
This isn't the kind of beer I'd usually go for in a shop. I maybe would in a pub. But it really tastes like I kind of want to be sat somewhere really cosy
Yeah,
with a
it does,
fire
yeah.
in front of me. And
Bonfire
Yeah.
night sort of
it's
thing.
tasty, I'm enjoying it.
I prefer its taste to its smell. I don't think
Yeah,
it's got a bad
same.
smell, but like it's not got a.
Yeah.
It's not really
It's
got
not
a
really
particularly
enticing,
nice
yeah.
smell now.
I think it's quite inoffensive in its taste. There's a certain sort of tanginess to the aftertaste that I'm not overly keen on. It's leaving sort of like a bit of a tanginess at the back of my throat. And I've never normally said this about a beer. It's almost like it just needs a little bit more kind of maltiness to it.
Yeah, a bit of sweetness, maybe it's quite
Just
dry and bitter.
something. Not that there's nothing. I'm not drinking it thinking I dislike it in any way. It's all right.
Yeah.
I could polish off. a few
It would
hours.
be nice on a dark evening with a
Yeah.
fire sparkling somewhere and your family not far away and all having a laugh.
Actually, it has a strange sort of smell of like
Yes.
bonfire night and
I
stuff like that.
I don't really. On the back of the bottle, it says
It's hot
this is the
beef.
beer to use for the best beef in beer. Like I don't really understand that.
Do you mean
because
like use it in like?
is it
pies
saying
or something?
cook it, or is
Yeah.
it saying they feed it to the
Cooking it.
cows? The
Oh right,
Spengringers cows. Either way, I feel a little bit like that statement's doing the beer a bit of a disservice. Like saying is
Like a cooking lager.
yeah.
Yeah.
Like,
Actually, yeah, could that be the full circle? The mash goes to the cows from brewing the beer, and then the meat from the cows eventually goes into a pie with the beer. Would that bring it to full circle? I might just
Either way,
invented that.
That's messing
so-
with my brain. That just.
yeah, I feel like it's not the best way to say
Yeah,
this is
to
a
describe
nice
this is
beer.
a nice beer. Yeah.
Terminology,
I
isn't
think
it?
they're doing
Yeah.
themselves a bit of a disservice there. But either way, I'm enjoying it.
Headland Red, nice. Yeah. Yeah. Again, it's not something I would pick to take home particularly, but quite happy to drink that. If I was on the coast, not far from Flamborough and Bridlington and that. Their brewery's lovely up on the top. If you ever walk in the Wold's Way, their brewery is a short, few minutes diversion off that, up off the top of the Yorkshire Wolds, and you can pop in there. They do a tasting event on a Thursday. They've got a bar in there that they use for different functions and that. Very good.
Right, let's reflect a little bit on the month that has passed, because it's been a busy kind of beery month. We've talked a bit about Peekender already. Obviously, we did a special sort of extra episode from it, a bonus episode from Beekender. I don't think we particularly need to talk any more about that as such. It was a great event, had a lot of a really good time there. So let's talk about the other big beery event in Sheffield, which was Funkfest Abbeydale, which we talked about a little bit last time. I've got to hold my hands up at this point and say I didn't go, and I was meant to go, and it got to the Sunday, it was the weekend after Peekender, and you know, my body had just reached a point where I got up in the morning and my body went, you are not having beer today, I cannot take any more, please no more beer. So I didn't go. However, Adam, you went the day before, you went on the Saturday
evening, yeah.
And I know you had a chat to a few people there as well, so I will hand over to you and Laura.
Yeah, well, I can't believe how it's tucked away in a tiny little kind of your brewery's tucked away in a kind of little off street off Abbeydale Road, and you would never know it was a brewery. And then when I actually looked for it on Google Maps, I found Laura there on Street View, just staring at, as people do on Street View. You know, the faces are blanked out, but you can see them going, "What the fuck's that?" I've never seen a Google car, but yeah.
I have no recollection of seeing it outside.
Yeah, so once you go into your little kind of thing into your brewery, I was amazed at how you'd basically changed the brewery into kind of this like really open, airy space with nice little areas where you could kind of sit, and all the vessels and stuff are there, and the nice big tap wall. Yeah, really good. I had some cracking beers. I was drinking thirds. Well, we were getting 2/3. Me and my brother-in-law went, and we were sharing thirds to drink as many beers in as possible. Some absolute beautiful beers. I'm trying to think of some ones that did the little Earth Project one was really good. Tried the Creeping Brett, which is now out in cans, which is the Yeasty Boys Abbeydale collaboration, which is beautiful, which I actually had tonight again on cake, which is first time you tried it, wasn't it?
Yeah, first time I've tried it out in the wild.
And Laura, you put some serious hours in that week, didn't you?
I did, yeah. It was a busy week. We were, with it being a bank holiday, we weren't quite fully staffed at the brewery, so it kind of fell on those of us that were there. But I think I'd say it was definitely worth it in the end. It was really, really well received. The thing that made me really proud to have put the event on along with Jim was the kind of real mixture of people that were there. Like, there was no fixed age range, that it wasn't particularly male dominated, it was just really mixed. And the kind of beer drinker that was there as well, we had quite a few people who travelled, who I think were more into the sour side of things. So we had shout out to Katie, who came all the way from Clitheroe. We had somebody, Ewan, who came up from Folkestone in Kent, I think. Wow. People from all around the country came, which was fantastic to see for something that was just the first year that we'd done it. We weren't really sure how it was going to go down.
Beer Festival should have an award for the
most miles travelled.
Person.
Yeah. If you came from further than Clitheroe or Kent, get in touch. But then we also had kind of inquisitive Sheffielders who were moonshine fans, who knew of the brewery, had never really had the chance to go before, because we've only opened up once, which was over a year ago now. Who just wanted to come and have a look around and see what we were doing. And then we're kind of surprised at how, I was really surprised at how people were really willing to try the sours. We did have, the festival opened at 11:30 on Saturday, and at 11:42 somebody brought a beer back to the bar and said, "Is this beer supposed to be sour?" And we were all like, "Oh no, what have we done?" But thankfully he'd picked the most kind of obnoxiously sour balsamic beer on the bar, and I think it had taken him by surprise. But everybody just totally embraced what we were doing, whether they were there because they like sours or not. So for me it was a really proud weekend, and watch this space for Funkfest 2019.
Do you know one thing that I just remembered actually? And it was, we went up to where we were kind of selling the cans and the where the tank kind of stuff was, and there was a nice complimentary packet of Rennies on the side.
Yes.
Which is but luckily I didn't find it. It is the kind of thing you think if you're just drinking sour beers constantly, like as you said, there's not been any festivals as far as we're aware outside London. Like, no one really knows what the effect of just having a big session on sort of sour or...
That's a very middle-aged man statement. Thank you for the settlers at the beer festival, Adam.
What?
Into indigestion at the beer festival.
I didn't really have any. My brother-in-law he was kind of like,
Oh, that's okay.
Oh, it can strike when you least expect it, can't it?
Does your brother-in-law listen?
But
Name him.
Yeah, I think
What's
so.
his name?
Chris Cook.
Chris Cook.
Well, thanks, Chris. I hope they made you feel
But he
better.
didn't actually need it. He didn't actually need them.
He's not from Folkestone, is he?
He was kind of like preparing in
I'm all
advance.
for the preventative Rennie when you're drinking sours. I think it's a good move.
But I think the actual range that you had on, everything I had, didn't. There were like all the barrel aged stuff. That kind of softens that. It seems to soften that kind of sharpness that you can get from like more like your kettle kind of sour style stuff. And I think that everything I drunk, there was nothing that I kind of felt. I really want to drink
Too
much more of
acidic.
that, or really acidic. I didn't really feel that.
Are there any foods?
Yeah, there
Rather
was.
than Rennies, are there any foods that would go well with sour beers to calm people down naturally?
Mashed
Or
potato.
not? Mash.
I
Jacket
like it for a
taters.
nice ice cream.
Ice cream.
Oh, yeah, that would calm.
I also put just on ice cream and beer festivals. I had a salted caramel lucharia at Peak Ender. Drank a little bit of it and was like, because it's an ice cream porter, delicious. And I was drinking it, I was like, quite fancy this an ice cream flip. So I just went over to the ice cream man, got him to put me a quid of Mr. Whippy in my lucharia. And it was, Thornbridge put it on their Instagram.
I did see that.
And
Really?
somebody behind the bar the day after recognised me back because I'd got some glitter stickers all over my glass. He recognised me by my glass from being the girl who put the Mr. Whippy in the lucharia, which I think is a good claim to fame.
It's a cracking thing.
There must be Mr. Whippies across the country planning
Sour
craft beer,
floats.
craft beer
Sour-
event.
That's a licensing nightmare, isn't it? That is a licensing nightmare.
Turn up with your van, Bob a scooping, and Bob's your uncle. Surely that's
It was a nice little thing that you were telling
Mind
us.
that child taking a whole sinister turn there, isn't
It was
it?
a nice little
Mind that pint.
little story from the festival. You were telling us on the chat about the woman who recognised your voice.
Yes, I did a brewery tour for a really nice couple. Showed them round, was just kind of doing my usual chatting away, and got to the end of the tour, and the woman who was on the tour kind of looked at me and went, "Is it you that's on the Hopcast?" And I was like, "Yes, it is." And it was really nice to meet some listeners.
Did you think you were Adam?
Oh, that's offensive too.
I was feeling a little bit husky that evening.
I was trying to offend you, but it did go wrong, that, actually.
Now, Adam, you did get an interview while you were there as
did,
well. We're going to play that in a second. First of all, you probably heard we've just opened beer number 2. So, I mean, for me, a hype beer is kind of something from Verdant or from Magic Rock or something like that. Now, this is a beer where there's been huge hype about it this year. Massive hype about this beer.
In the press, I definitely think so.
Yeah, I'm not sure whether I would call it hype. I would just call it.
You did seem outraged when I said that, but I think this has been
reporting.
all over. I've seen this this has been like on news
But
stories.
this is a
every
world
day.
event. This is a world event. There are very few Trappist breweries across the world.
So it's hype then.
Belgium, Holland, USA, and the first ever English Trappist brewery. So Monk's down at, I think is it Charnwood Forest in Leicestershire, not far from East Mids Airport. I've had a bit of a 5-year project to put together Tint Meadow, which from Yorkshire sounds slightly awkward. Tint is a word I would say, particularly from Barnsley.
Tin.
Yeah, Tint Meadow means it's over in meadow-like, isn't it? So, but everywhere else, I'm sure, suffers less from that problem. And this is the first ever. We're going to drink the first ever English Trappist ale, and I've had it already. I think, without trying to prejudice your thoughts, I think it stacks up unbelievably well to the Belgian doubles.
Matches the hype, does it?
I think it does. It was better than I imagined. It was better than and that is a big compliment. It was better than I imagined.
If anybody sees the picture of this bottle, me and Sean were talking about it looks like your classic 500ml bottle because of its shape.
Yeah, it does.
But it's not.
I bought them thinking they were 500ml for the shop.
330 is certainly. It's kind of like a miniature style of
It's got a beautiful glass.
It does have that
I've never
for
seen
it,
anything
doesn't
like that.
Right, we'll make a start on this. Adam, tell us about who you were talking to then at Funkfest.
Well, as we sat there, a gentleman called John Conway, he's non-executive director, is that right? Yeah. He's going around and basically talking to everybody there, which is really nice. So you could see we're having a really good time, making sure all the visitors were having a good time and enjoying themselves. So he kind of sat with us for a few minutes, and I'm like, yeah, while you're here, why don't we have a chat on the microphone? So he gives 10 minutes of his time, and here's what he had to say about the festival and the project as a whole.
My name is John Conroy. I'm a director of Abbeydale Brewery. My task is beer strategy and distribution in terms of the brewery's forward-looking projection.
So we're down here on a Saturday evening, and it's Funk Fest. It's the second session. So tell us a little bit about kind of how this has come about and the Funk Dungeon project as a whole.
It's really about taking the brewery, as we've been established in Sheffield since '96, in what we've been doing in what people would perceive as traditional English-style cask beers, where we're trying to establish the brewery as a direction of doing more styles of craft brewing and craft brewing in the wider sense. So we're looking at everything from big American-style IPAs and pale ales and imperial stouts, through to wild ales and mixed fermentation styles of beers. So our project here is really about where we can offer the drinking public an opportunity to meet with many different styles of sour, saison, funk, what would people appreciate as funk styles, in the wider sense. So not only our beers, but beers from other breweries which are fairly much like-minded. In all senses of the word, funk can encompass saison, it can encompass farmhouse, it can encompass sours, gozers, Berliner Weiss, all those kind of styles. What we're trying to do here is bring those into one environment, in one tasting session that people can enjoy and experience. Some of it is for what you'd see as the geeks, some of it's for education, for people that have never tried these styles before. And really what we're trying to do is accomplish both sides of it. So in doing this, we are underpinning our credentials as a craft brewer, a brewer of different styles of beers as well as the traditional, as well as being open-minded to welcoming our colleagues in other brewing industry, in the brewing industry, to take on board the different saison, the different wild ales, the different sours, the different cultures, lactobacillus, Brettanomyces, all these things that people have heard about but really don't understand. So it's, for us, a long-term project, and for an educational point of view, an opportunity for people to try it in an environment which has the widest appeal.
So for anybody who's never kind of branched out into this sort of style, for somebody who's maybe a newbie, what reasons would you say you should come and try that sort of beer?
Well, it's basically the fundamental expansion of the beer profile. Beers like this have been brewed for hundreds of years, and particularly the Flemish and French farmhouse styles, where they're using wild yeast to ferment their beer. These are styles which have been around for many, many years. What we're doing now is we're trying to expand that into different flavours, and almost it's an opportunity to try those different styles. So as a newbie, what you would expect to see is the beers are a lot sharper, a lot drier, a lot crisper. They're almost, I would say, a platform on which you paint other adjuncts. And when I say adjuncts, I mean things like fruits, hops, spices. These are things that are painted onto the top of the sour beer. So from a layman's point of view, it's a way of effectively bringing people who have come from, say, a cider background or a cocktail type background into the world of beer as we understand it. And that to us is really important in expanding the culture, expanding the portfolio, expanding the footprint, if you like. And that, to me, is very important. You know, beer is not a monopolar thing. It's not something that's just unidirectional. I say this to a lot of people, that it's never been a better time to be a beer drinker. It really hasn't, because there's so much available. And what you have to do is open your mind, experiment a little. Don't just take it on the first word or on a recipe. Try it. Try a sample, because that will, in all seriousness, it will open your mind to a whole number of different flavour profiles. So if I say from a Goza will be salty, it will be dry. A Berliner Weiss, it will be sharp, it will be tart. A sour, depending on how it's been, the souring process, be it Brettanomyces, Lactobacillus, the kettle souring, barrel aging, will vary in the souring degree. But look at, on top of that, the fruits, the spices, the hops, because all those will be painted on top of that particular flavour profile.
One thing that I never even heard about until we went to the Indie Beer Feast and you guys are there, was the Encantada. So that's a slightly different style. Can you tell anybody who's never even heard of, is it Groot style? Tell a little bit about that sort of style and what you guys have done to produce a beer.
Well, it's actually an ancient recipe, and what we did with Encantada was Beradero, which is with Spanish brewery just outside of Barcelona. We brewed with them with this particular ancient recipe. So it's a recipe from way back, because beer's been around for thousands of years, and originally hops were not a feature of beer. So essentially it's an ancient recipe that involves various cultures and various vegetal inputs that do not involve hops. So it's a beer that's an ancient recipe that has not a hoppy flavour to it. So it's essentially, it's not a sour as such. I can liken it to a very, very strong in strength, lightweight Belgian beer, because of this, essentially using a wild yeast, but not in a way that's forced souring and without hops.
Just to kind of bring it back to the Funk Fest, what would you say is your sort of favourite beer that you've had this evening or this weekend, and I think it's gone?
Well, it's to be honest, my first impression, this is absolutely fantastic. The culture of the people we've had here today has been incredible. We have people who are from the extreme gurus to the people who are the newbies to the sour culture, which is fantastic. It's what we sought to achieve. We're trying to get to a position where we're trying to educate, and that's really what we're about. We're educating and allowing people that experience. From my favourite beers, I've had exceptional beers from Siren, from Fine Ales, our own Abbeydale, and I've got to say that Jim, who's in charge of our Funk Dungeon, has done an absolutely stellar job in producing some of the beers. I'm looking forward to really getting those beers out to the wider public to allow them to experience what we've had today.
So one beer that's been canned, I think, is the Creeping Brett, which is the collaboration with Yeasty Boys. So probably go and try that. Do you know much about what to expect from that as a beer?
Actually, I don't. It's one of the beers I'm not. There have been so many great beers I've had today. It's been absolutely fantastic. I'm thinking that, yeah.
It's just tasted it.
As you'd expect, it's got that a real almost base saison flavour with it. So it's got that hint of Belgian to it. The souring is not heavy, so it's actually quite light. The chill temperature is very, very good. I think that's a really acceptable kind of training, like our Unbeliever, like a training wheels sour that I think people would get on with. So I think, and I believe it's actually a Weizen as well. So it's basically got a heavy wheat content, which you can actually taste in the background. So there's a sort of a hint of the clove and a little bit of touch of the banana that you'd expect with a Weizen. But in all senses of the word, you know, it's a little bit sharper. So if a Weissen is a little bit too sweet for you, this will actually hit the mark because it's actually just a touch sharper.
Thank you for your time. Have a good evening.
Thank you, and just thank you for everybody. I just want to thank everybody for their support in and their love for Abbeydale Brewery. Thank you.
Cheers.
So thank you to John from Abbeydale Brewery, who spent a bit of time to speak to Adam. While you've been hearing that, we've been enjoying, I mean, this is a landmark beer, isn't it? I know we talked about it beforehand, but the first UK Trappist beer.
Yeah, for anyone that's unsure on this, this means that the beer is brewed by monks in a monastery. Simple.
Monks don't drink, though, do they? Is there some kind of big rule about being a monk that you're not allowed to drink?
I'm not sure on that one, actually.
Could be a celibacy.
I thought there was, yeah.
Yeah.
We should be a real. When it comes around to trying it time, it'd be like.
I think
it's all
I
right.
think that monks do drink. I know the monks on Caldy Island off South Wales, I think, make a mead down there, and I think they drink that. Lindisfarne, I think there are monks on there, they make mead, and I'm pretty certain the monks of Tint Meadow will have tasted their own beer.
I wonder what it is that makes them want to do it though. Like
to brew or to be
yeah,
monks?
Well, just to brew. It seems a weird
The monks of Tint Meadow decided that 5 years ago or so decided that they needed to look at another way of making money, to be blunt, and so I'd seen the success of other Trappist breweries across Belgium and a couple of other countries, and so decided, with a lot of time, a lot of investment, a lot of training, a lot of patience, which is done right rather than rush things, and went to market then, what was it, a couple of months ago now, I think, isn't it?
It's Buddhist monks don't drink.
Is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
So non-Buddhist monks, they're all
These
hammered.
are East
They're
Mids
absolutely,
monks,
they're smashed
so
all the
they're
time.
okay.
Yeah, they're fine.
Aroma of dark sort of dried fruits, raisins, that type of thing. 7.4%. They have never compared themselves to anyone else, but quite naturally, perhaps when you drink this, you start to look at Westmalle Double and things like that and try and balance and compare it with something like that. English ingredients throughout, so English yeast. Perhaps they could have gone Belgian yeast and
I really like that they didn't,
and
though.
gone that. Yeah, they should be congratulated for not doing that. And they went to Belgium and visited other Trappist brewers and sought advice and information, but when everything English, and I think it stacks up. Yeah, I think it stacks up. So I like it.
Probably three things that I've noticed about it. One is it actually tastes really nice, and it's a very balanced beer. It's got a really nice taste to it. It doesn't have any sort of nasty lingering aftertaste, which was my complaint about the last beer that we had. It is it's how much is it at Beer Central?
350 we charge.
It's a pretty well priced beer, I think, for what it is. And it doesn't taste its percentage. They're the things that I've sort of observed about it.
I am picking up quite a lot of booziness off it, actually.
Yeah.
I think
I've not been.
I absolutely love that this beer exists. I think it's a great story. I think it's a great thing that they're doing, and it is a very good example of the style of beer that they're making. But I think I'm personally not really feeling it. It's nothing to do with the beer being, subpar or anything like that. I think it's just not to my taste. It's a little bit sticky. It's making my teeth feel a little bit fluffy.
Oh, yeah, I like that stickiness. Autumnal stickiness.
I'm really technical to say I thought it would be more Belgian-y.
Yeah.
Yeast
Should they be congratulated for not being more Belgian-y? Or
doesn't have that kind of yeast, kind of like.
No,
like,
it doesn't have that.
I think there was an
yeasty
English
aftertaste.
interpretation of a Belgian Abbey style.
Yeah.
I think it's it is really good.
I don't think that. Yeah, I think maybe I misunderstood what it was trying to do. I think maybe I thought I would expect it to be like, imitated.
Yeah, no,
whereas it's not. It's more standalone.
Yeah.
So if you're not really into Belgian beers, it would like put you off if you like kind of your dark beers.
But I think it gets close to them in terms of satisfaction.
I quite like it.
Yeah.
No, I think it's surprised me. I wouldn't expect to. It would normally be everything that I'd find a bit bland about a beer. When it's got the words English and ale in the title, I'd be like, nah. All it needs is the word red or brown in the title to go with it. That
brown.
would make me
Turn up today.
just like horrendously just everything that I don't want. But I've enjoyed it. It's really nice.
I'm really
So-
glad I've tried it.
I think potentially we have a landmark UK first. I think James is the first person to drink an English Trappist ale wearing a baseball cap backwards. I think that's a first.
So I turn it round.
This is what Sheffield Hopcast.
This is culture clash.
Chef Hopcast is all about
Yeah.
first.
This is all based on my my current idol, who clearly is Majid,
Yeah.
the mayor of Sheffield, who, you know, anyone that knows anything about themselves is going to model themselves on him. And
Watch out for the photo. Watch out for the photo. You should have been listing the glass.
I imagine that
On
he
the
would be a
bottle.
big fan of this beer. He'd appreciate the real earthiness to it and all its
I
all its
think he'd love
qualities.
every beer. I'm not sure whether he drinks anyway,
I think he does.
I'm not sure. Beer number 3.
So what have we got?
Still City.
We have,
So this is
We can quite easily say for the first time ever on Chef Hopcast that the brewer of this beer is a bastard. All right, and Dave would be proud to hear those words. This is Steel City Brewing. Dave's a bastard. He's probably in Germany or Poland or the Czech Republic drinking beer in some bar near a train station at the moment, which I love to see his travels. This is a recent release from Dave. It's called The Blood, the Wine, the Roses. I've been telling people for about 3 weeks it's called The Blood, the Sweat, the Roses. I've been getting confused.
Can I buy a bottle of sweat, please?
Blood and sweat.
The Blood, the Sweat, the Roses. The Blood, the Sweat normally works, doesn't
Add a
it?
bit of blood to that.
It's a
sweat,
6.8% stout. It's been aged in Bordeaux red wine barrels. And here's a nod. I'm going to get a real approval points here because my in-laws, Tommy and Joan, were given this beer by Deborah as a thank you for giving us a lift somewhere recently, but then asked us again for another because they had enjoyed the beer so much. So Tommy and Joan, this is heavily recommended by them. I've not tried it myself.
I was going to say, have any of us tried this beer before?
No.
Because I think this is one of the beers that, if it's one of those, you need to have a little sniff of it before you actually drink it, I think.
Ooh.
Oh yeah, it's got a beautiful label on the front. Is that poppies or roses? Excuse me, bloody
I don't know
poppies.
how-
Can we edit that?
No, we can't.
They're quite clearly roses.
Quite clearly.
Quite clearly.
So I mentioned earlier, this is the first Hopcast where Sean's
I've only had 2 pints.
Oh, it does smell it. Do you know how well these beers travel? Because even in Sheffield, I reckon, is probably quite an understated brewer because it doesn't really have a brewer. Is
Steel City is
cuckoo
from a point of view of Dave doesn't have his own brewery. He brews Cuckoo brews at other breweries. More recently Toolmakers, but previously Little Ale Cart, perhaps one other, and now at Lost Industry at Wadsley Bridge. He's a regular in the pub downstairs. I thought we may have even seen him tonight in here. He's a very famous beer ticker. Has I'm guessing approaching, I don't know, it's 30,000 a silly figure, but he's got absolutely thousands of beers, searches them all over the world, and is a particular fan now of sour beers, but his own brews can vary from transatlantic pales. This is a stout, and he's got his Stout Wars beers that will be launched shortly, which is a
We had
Yeah.
the episode 1,
yeah.
The Funky Menace it was called, that was on at Funkfest. It was very nice.
I think I might mention it in the half pint, but because we actually did Steel City Medusa in the half pint. So basically, complete polar opposites. I've not tried this yet, but
Medusa is
yeah,
beautiful.
but yeah, the Stout Wars one was the beer they were brewing when we went to see the
Oh, yeah,
industry.
correct. Yeah, Jimmy was there.
Way back in May.
Is that when it was?
No, it was
the start of our adventure.
I was going to wait till the end before we did this, but we're going to have to explain this because we've referenced it several times. So I was planning on just doing a couple of thank yous at the end, one of which was to Beer Matters, who featured us in their last edition, and the other was to Vibe, who have features. Actually, in fact, I'll probably credit to Sean, because Sean writes a column for them every month, which is normally about his favourite beers, but this month he's dedicated his column to the Hopcast. Now, chances are you've read this, and there's nothing that seems a little odd.
It's only been launched today, so people might not.
If you have read it, or if you do read it now, there'll be nothing that seems particularly odd. In version 1 of the story, Sean talked about myself and Adam approaching him in May.
April.
April.
Approached us in April, and
to start it
in May.
In May.
Brilliant.
We started. It was. I think it was November. November or December when we actually approached Sean, and we started in January. So we pointed this out to him. He quickly changed it.
Beautiful edit.
Hence our jokes throughout the evening of first episode being.
If you can get a screenshot of that and print it out, it might be worth something.
The original. I could have done. I'll get it changed back tomorrow. I'm going to change
Do you
it.
think if you've got a screenshot of it, you bring it into Beer Central, you get a £1 off a beer?
Yeah, correct. Yeah, I'm glad. Anything over £10, you get £1 off.
If you've got any kind of techie, you can just change it yourself anyway.
So I apologise for that, but my memory. I've explained this earlier while we're off air, that I get confused sometimes between our monthly bottle shares and the Hopcast in terms of venues we visit and beers we drink. So forgive me.
Yeah, he's just suggested we do one at White Lion with John over.
Which we've done already.
This is an interesting beer, actually.
So
very interesting.
The blood, the wine, the roses.
I'm not sure.
I'm sure it's a reference to some music. So I'm relying on you three for that. Dave does love his black metal.
The roses. Oh, I was thinking Stone Roses.
Absolutely no chance.
I'm
Dave's a
clearly
big
not.
fan of the Stone Roses, but I don't think this beer is linked to it anyway. There's no point trying to read his labels, because
I can't read a word of it.
The text on there is always awful to read.
It has got some rose flowers.
Oh yeah, Laura's got it.
It's a song by a band called My Dying Bride.
Nice.
It's 8 minutes and 23 seconds long.
Is it?
It's not a song I'm personally familiar with, but I will listen to it later.
I bet Dave's a big fan of that song. Although I don't think he's ever been married.
So I was thinking, because it does have rose flowers in it.
I'm not
And obviously
tasting much
it does
of the
have-
rose.
I'm getting the flowers.
Obviously it has red wine in it, so I'm thinking the wine, the roses, I get that.
I
Then
definitely get
bit,
the wine character.
the blood.
The
I
barrel
mean,
aging is lovely.
there's a
on
dead
it.
person that's just been thrown in the mash tun, maybe. That's
That won't be a big shock, but I'm enjoying it actually.
doesn't mention any dead people.
My in-laws are right. It's got a tartness to
Yeah,
it.
it's like I'm not getting the
Is that
kind of
tannin
I'm
from
not
the
getting
red
the
wine barrel?
Yeah, I'm not
No,
getting the
it's got a
stouty
tartness
bit
to it.
No, I'm getting the.
There's no roastiness. It's fruity.
Yeah, I'm getting the kind of floralness with the kind of
Yeah.
slightly, like I said, quite like, I would say like cherry, but that kind of like kind of
dark
fruit, kind of
yeah.
like that kind of
Yeah,
slightly
very
tartness
nice.
to it. Yeah,
Very nice.
You got, there's nothing particularly stouty about it in terms of
It's
taste.
surprisingly easy to drink though, I think.
It's
really enjoyed it.
It's not my kind of thing at all. It's just a bit too winey for me. I'm not a wine.
You sounded very whiny saying that.
it is a bit like red winey, isn't it? If you get
That's
obviously,
lovely.
yeah.
I can appreciate that it's nice for what it is, and it actually tastes a lot nicer than when I first smelt it and thought, oh, I'm not going to enjoy this. It's just not my particular personal style.
I think its smell gives away what it tastes like. You know, it's not one of those ones that tricks you.
Aroma matches up.
Yeah, quite well. Yeah, I don't think I rush back to it, but that doesn't mean it's a bad beer.
But
I really hope Dave is downstairs when we go down, actually. I'll introduce
No, but what
you
I was saying is
to
that if this is your kind of beer, because it's, you can absolutely taste, you can even taste the barrel part of it, like every bit of the flavour it's supposed to have.
Yeah,
the
character
wool comes
just
through.
lingering, yeah.
It's extremely representative of its style, and very true.
It's the
of its
most
style.
complex beer so far.
Absolutely.
You know when you have a red wine, you get that very like kind of
tannin.
Yeah, tannin. You get that
bitterness.
Yeah, it's like a dryness.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah. Good.
Shall we meet someone that's done something particularly unusual and in a way quite special? And this month I've done absolutely nothing towards this episode of the Hopcast. I'm going to hand over to Adam again,
I'm looking at
who met someone with. It's quite an unusual claim to fame.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Come on, Adam. Who have you met?
I don't know.
Well, you've only done 2 interviews this month. One was with Abbeydale.
You listen to me.
No, I'm joking.
Have you got it?
Yeah.
But just for the record, I'm not editing any of that out. That is staying in. That is staying in.
For a change,
2 interviews that you've done.
For a
we
change,
forgot about one of them.
For a change, I thought we'd seek out somebody who was called Jamie or James, because that's tends what we do. So Jamie, we saw an article in the I newspaper about a couple of guys who'd been around and drunk in every pub in Sheffield, and it reached about 520 something. And I've actually come across him on Twitter a few times, and he will be writing a book about his travels around Sheffield and just the general history of pubs in Sheffield generally. So we thought it might be a good idea to catch up for a chat. So there's a chat with Jamie from Sheffield Pubs.
It's Adam here. I'm here with Jamie Thompson. So June, we saw an article in the I newspaper, and it's about a couple of guys who had attempted to visit all the pubs in Sheffield. So this is going back a few years ago now, but we thought it might be a nice, interesting little chat. So where did this idea come from, really?
Well, about 20 years ago, more than 20 years ago, I used to follow a band around Sheffield with my older brother, a band called the Bendy Monsters. And the guys who were in the band were about 10 years or so older than us, and they were doing it at the time. And when I was about 14, it seemed like a really good thing to aspire to, and I was quite envious that they'd actually done it. And I think they probably finished it sort of in the early 90s. So that's sort of where the idea came from. And one sort of, I think it was a New Year's Day a few years ago. For Christmas, I'd been bought a Sheffield Pubs map. And we were looking at it and talking to my friend Dave. So, have you been there? Have you been there? Oh, I've never heard of that place. And went, right, well, let's go and see what it's like. So we went off, and then following from that, we both made a list of what pubs we'd been to, and then thought, well, there's quite a lot we haven't been to, and didn't know anything about them. And then, sort of 15, 16 years ago, wasn't that much information about them on the internet, so it wasn't as easy then to find out anything about them. So some of them didn't know anything about them, and then were none the wiser until we actually turned up.
So from that article, I gather it's well over 500 different pubs. Did you have kind of any sort of method in how you kind of went about visiting these pubs?
Yeah, I mean, there were some rules that we kind of applied to it. We predominantly, when we did them, we would often have a day off work or go in an evening and go to a particular area and try and do 5, 6, 7 pubs in one go. We had a rule that we had to have a pint in each one. Some of them I had to drive, so that would be a pint of shandy for me. But yeah, you tend to go to an area that you were unfamiliar with and usually spend all day there, and more often than not be a little bit underwhelmed, and increasingly find that some places either weren't open because they'd shut down, or they just were dying a death. Really, I think we did it at an interesting time because you were really sort of seeing the pubco thing starting to bite, and a lot of places really kind of becoming very run down or really sad when you went in, that you could see that they weren't going to last. And 500 and I can't remember how many, 520 or something, I think Yeah, about 500, yeah, that we went in. There's probably about 100, going on for 150 now out of that 500 that have gone, that have shut, been demolished. All the other things. Funeral parlours, dentists, vets, shops, you name it. So, yeah.
So I was wondering if you had like, any interesting stories from any of the places you went to, or is there any places that you were pleasantly surprised by?
Well, usually, when your expectations are quite low, which ours were, we're more often than not pleasantly surprised, because some places we've been told, that place is really rough. It's really, you don't want to go there. Why would you go there? And you're thinking, oh, well, we'll put that one off. I mean, one particular place that I wouldn't say I was pleasantly surprised by was the cannon near the market, which we were sensible when we went. We went at lunchtime shortly after it opened, but I was pleasantly surprised it weren't quite as frightening as we expected it to be. Funnily enough, that weren't one of the only two places I've been in where I think, bearing in mind it were something like a Thursday lunchtime, we were one of the few people drinking, and it were like keg stones. Everybody else was smoking weed. So it was a bit of an eye-opener. It shut shortly after, which came as no surprise. But yeah, pleasantly surprised. On the other hand, I think then as well, you'd be pleasantly surprised if you went somewhere and it had got hand-pulled beer on, particularly something from out of the area or something unusual, which were really rare. And yeah, sometimes it weren't so good because they weren't selling much of it, but that was really unusual to find hand-pulled on in sort of 15 years or so ago.
So what's your experience since then, and how have you found Sheffield as a city and how it's moved forward?
Well, I think certainly in the last 6 years since we've finished, in respect to hand-pulled traditional real ale, Sheffield, arguably I would say, has got the best selection in the country. I know that Canberra's surveys probably reflect that. I think a little bit in respect to sort of the craft scene, I think we're perhaps a little bit behind some other major cities and towns, but I think we're getting there. I don't know if that's because of the image of Sheffield as a northern real ale bitter drinking city. I think that's part of it, and I think that's just part of the sort of psyche of Sheffield. I think you'd be hard pressed to find anywhere else that's got the variety and the quality of pubs as well, which I think is important. It's the good ones have thrived, I think, and adapted and become far better. And of course, then you've got, I don't know how many micro pubs there is now. That's what you want to call them. I'm not sure. That's certainly added something in probably in the last 3 years, never mind the last 6 years. So, but it's definitely a good time to be living in Sheffield if you like beer.
So you mentioned your book. I assume this is kind of roughly about your experiences, but I could be wrong. You want to tell us a little bit about what the book's about?
Yeah, well, the book, I've been working on it now for three and a half years, researching it, and it's two things really. It's come out of my experiences and having the knowledge, going in all these pubs, and it was something I'd always wanted to do. I've sort of factored that in with more of a general history of pubs in Sheffield, because I think that there's been a lot of good work done before with other books. But a lot of them are now out of date and there's a lot of gaps, and certainly none of them reflect the scene of probably the last 20 years, never mind the last 6 years that we've been talking about. And I think it was a good time to do it. I've focused on the sort of post-war period, but I think as well a lot of history books and a lot of books written about Sheffield pubs fall into two things. They talk a lot about the very old past and things that were probably no one alive would know what they're on about, or would have visited them. And also, without fail, more often than not, every book that I've read about Sheffield pubs is written by someone who's looking back, talking about their experiences, and usually saying that everything now is terrible and everything then was much better, even when they're talking about outside toilets, dreadful tank Whitbread trophy beer, you name it, and it's sort of the rose-tinted spectacles of the past. And I wanted to sort of break that down because, yeah, I mean, I can talk about the past and places that I've been in, and it was what it was, but I think it was important to kind of acknowledge the more recent history, because people don't really care about more recent history. And by that, when you look at what research being done and what's out there, 1951 was a good starting point for me, because an obvious thing, and this isn't just in Sheffield, is people talking about pubs with flat roofs, for example, and ugly building, ugly estate pubs, etc. I mean, these are places that people used, communities used them for a relatively short period of time. Some of them only 20, 25 years, 30 years, but they are significant. And again, it's something that has been overlooked. And through research, through the archives at Sheffield Libraries, I've got a lot of information and a lot of stuff that's not been published before, and permission to use images and architect drawings, and a lot of pictures from Picture Sheffield that are out there but have never, if you like, been pulled together as one. So I'm hoping for it to be fairly definitive. Part of the problem is that it's taking a long time to do. Hopefully it'll be out there soon.
So if anybody wants to kind of find out any more details or find you on social media, is anywhere that they should direct them to?
SheffieldPubs@outlook.com, and I'm on Twitter, and the handle is Pubs Sheffield, which I tweet regularly about, and sometimes share some of the images that I've found.
It's been a fascinating chat. I pretty appreciate your time, Jamie. All the best with the publishing, and we hope to see you next year.
Thank you.
Yeah, so thanks to Jamie for that. We did actually have a big long conversation. I was there for probably a couple of hours nearly, actually talking about stuff, and there is an extended version of that interview which is about 20 minutes long, which we will be putting up on our SoundCloud page.
Just as soon as we remember the password to it.
That's all right. Yeah, so as soon as we'll be putting it up in some format. But yeah, there's loads of good, interesting stuff in there. But obviously, we can't cram everything in, so that was the edited version. But if you're interested in that, we'll put a link up to it on us on Twitter and Facebook. So what have we got next then, guys?
Do you know, I've just noticed something, and this is the first time we've had a bottle-only hopcast. We've normally had a mixture of bottles and cans.
Well, that's more, yeah. That's
100%.
That's
been
very
bottled.
deliberate. Cans are very summery. And this is very much an intro to autumn.
Well, unless you happen to be
Podcast.
Thornbridge, who decide that this is the sorry, I just had a sniff of the beer. That this is the right time of the year to be bringing out bottle
Crikey, that's
cans.
This is a beer, actually, and we're being very appropriate. We've not poured this beer yet. We've opened the bottles. This is a beer to sniff.
It's a sniffing beer.
What's a snifter? What does a snifter represent?
Isn't it the size of glass?
Yeah, I think it is, isn't it? A small sort of glass.
Talking glasses.
Exactly, yeah. This is a beer to sniff and sniff and sniff.
Tell us about it then, Sean.
And then eventually drink it. It's my favourite beer of all time.
Never had it.
It is. So Omnipollo, Swedish brew company, Henrik Fenty and Carl Grandin. Henrik is the brewery influence, Carl is the design influence, so he's the one that gives us the smiley face on the front of the bottle. We've got a very close relationship with Buxton Brewery. This is a very much a coincidence that they came first to develop their relationship during the Rainbow Project 5 years ago, and they are celebrating tonight in Buxton, and most of Sheffield is there. We know you are there. But a Buxton Brewery, a Buxton Tap tonight is an Omnipollo Yellow Belly Buxton 5th birthday event, and the beer list is the most stupid I have ever seen in my whole life.
They've got all the versions of Yellow Belly, and they've all the.
It's just
I've just had a message from somebody who's there saying they queued 2 hours for a drink.
2 hours.
Oh, wow.
Dear. I'm so glad I'm here.
Like a festival, that is.
Well, I could have put up with that one indoors, autumnal, that fits.
That is.
Like Sheffield Beer Festival, one of my favourites.
Yeah, true. Next month.
Which I'm sure we'll talk about next month, yeah. So this
we're going
beer
to be there next month.
is Omnipollo Noah Pecan Mud, 11% pecan nut chocolate imperial stout.
This is calling out from
me and Laura have had it. Me and Laura have had it before. You two guys new.
I've never had it.
I've never had it before.
You should talk first.
I can feel it in my belly.
You should talk
like,
first.
I can probably feel, you know, like you feel the warmth.
What do you think to the aroma?
Like a whiskey.
The aroma was absolutely magical. The
Agreed.
other thing I would say is that I can taste chocolate. I can separately taste pecan. I can make out all the flavours that it's supposed to have. And they're sort of jumping around a bit.
It's really, really good. That.
It's like Disneyland in a beer.
That is bloody lovely. That. It's not too desserty either. I don't think. It's got a nice. It has got a slight bitterness, like a soft bitterness, but it doesn't have that kind of creamy kind of.
It's one of those great beers that it changes. It's like the whole process of drinking it, like from entering your mouth to you swallowing it, like it changes along the way. I think we've lost Sean a little bit.
I went silent for I was sniffing and tasting and twirling my glass.
I know we joked about it. We joked about it earlier about the fact that we actually started the Hopcast in January, which we did. But you way back in January, you talked about we all picked out like our favourite styles when we were getting to know each other. Yeah. We talked about our favourite styles of beer, and you talked about the really high percentage, really dark, stouty, portery beers as being your sort of choice.
They're my end of the night go-to. I think that type of question should always represent what you go to late on a night. And I love hoppy beers, but I love this thing later on. I love to look forward to something like this later on in the night.
I can picture myself once I've finished this and we've gone off and done whatever, like tomorrow evening or something like that, having a flashback and craving this beer.
Yeah. It's one of them
it's
beers
got
that
craveability
if you
to
think about it, when you're not drinking it, you can smell it. It's one of those. I have it with this beer, and I also have it with Hawkshead Tonka, which was the first Tonka bean beer I ever had, and had it at Indie Man when me and Sean went. Was it 3 years
Laura,
ago?
Yeah.
And
maybe
me and
3
Jim and
or
Sean
4.
and Chris, who was at the time working for Thornbridge, he's now one of the brewers at Beavertown, and the 4 of us went to Manchester on the train. We had the best day at Indie Man, and I had Hawkshead Tonka, and I was running around like, has everybody tried this? It's so good, and I can still. If I think about it to this day, I can taste it, and I feel like this is that kind of good.
Okay, question: is it too strong?
No.
Does it need to be as strong as it is?
Do you feel like it's 11%?
I can feel it in my belly like a whiskey.
Probably not.
I feel like like a slight, not like a nice warming burn.
Yeah.
If you drop that down to,
do you think it's more
7.5%, 8%?
Yeah.
Would it lose a huge amount?
Interestingly, we wanted an Omnipollo night here at Shakespeare's with Adam for Sheffield Beer Week, and Little Critters, his milk stout, was on the bar on cask at the time. Me and Adam both had a half of that while we were doing the Omnipollo event. We both put our half down on the side and the window. We were doing our Omnipollo event and talking about different beers and really had a good night. We both went back to our glass, and we'd not quite opened Noah. It was the last beer of the night. And we went back to our glasses, which were near the Noah bottles, and we both drank our glass and looked at each other and said, somebody's opened the Noah bottle. Somebody's opened one without us asking, are we short of a bottle? And that's 6%, I think. Yeah. And so I've always described that since as a sort of mini Noah, 6% Noah.
Yeah, that's good.
I think it's better on cask than it is now in bottle. But if you want a mini Noah, then Sheffield has got the ticket.
It's the fudge brownie stout.
Fudge brownie from North Riding
I think
Scarborough's Omnipollo.
This is a different animal. This though, I think it is it's a serious upgrade. Like it is in the same realm, and I think if you weren't paying attention, you get the same kind of flavour profiles. But when you really sip and think about it, there's so much depth to that.
It's really beautiful.
No, yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, I think I'm playing devil's advocate by asking the question of whether or not it needs to be 11%.
Does it? Well, I don't think anything needs to be that.
What it needs to be is soft serve poured at Buxton.
Some ice cream.
We still with pay.
A few marshmallows on the top of it.
Laura's championing it, going, if you're at a beer festival that's got an ice cream van, I'm going to ask them to drop a shot of Mr. Whippy on top of a dark beer.
Yeah.
I've got a feeling that for once, I'm not going to be surprised when it comes to beer of the night time as to what wins. But before we get to that point, then we have the small matter of
Homework.
We set ourselves the challenge at the Greystones a month ago of coming up with a new name for something that's always annoyed me when you go somewhere and you get served the drink and it's in a plastic vessel and it's referred to as a plastic glass, and it's a contradiction in terms. A glass is made of glass. You can't have a plastic glass, it doesn't work. You can't have a bus car. It's nonsense. We decided that we were going to, between us, we're going to come up with the industry standard for what should be the name for a glass that is made out of plastic. Sean's taken it very seriously, even though three days ago he was like, I've not even thought about it yet, mate.
I did it last night.
We'll come to Sean last. We're going to start with Laura.
Oh, good, because mine's really underwhelming.
Go on,
Oh,
do you want to steal one of my
no.
Well, I was thinking long and hard. I was trying to think of something that I could do with a pun. I just couldn't, and because at Fun Fest we were giving out, they were nice plastic
They're
glasses,
good.
polycarb, decent quality. They actually cost more than the glass.
They didn't look like plastic.
No, well, they were nice. They were nice
Facebook,
ones. Yeah, that we'd picked
Twitter
to be
and
kind of
Instagram.
on a sort of. We'd kind of gone for a sort of Belgian Gouzer kind of style glass. And I was actually really surprised that nobody complained about the fact they were made out of plastic. But I was thinking all through the day, like, what would I call this? And literally all I've come up with, and I'm really sorry this is terrible, but I've gone to basics and I've gone Plass.
Plass.
It's a plastic glass. A
How many
Plass. 2.
P-L-A-S.
Double S.
Double S. Plass.
It's simple. I think people would know what you were talking about. But it's not.
I think Plass
It's
is
not the kind of level
Do
I
you
would
want
have
that in
liked
it?
to have reached for this, but I think it
Is
is
this-
accessible and usable term.
Is this something that people will be given an alternative? Do you want it in a glass or a Plass?
Glass
Or is it something that you realise that this is going to be served in a Plass?
Yeah,
In
it's like.
So that they must have
so
it in
it's-
that
it's-
vessel,
Yeah,
and
it's,
that is the name for
it's,
it.
It's Plass's only, mate. Sorry, is that all right?
Yeah.
Plass's
Are
own.
you going
Plass is
outside,
on,
mate? I'm going to put in a plastic.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you've got to put it in a Plass.
So they might think you've said glass, which is a good thing, because when they say I want it in a glass, you say no.
Actually, now I've said
Except
it
when you read in
aloud
the
and given
newspaper
my
about someone,
argument.
It's all right,
someone was
Laura.
brutally
Yes.
plassed last night in a.
Plass is very simple
Yeah, no,
and
I'm
very
feeling-
obvious,
I'm
but
feeling-
none of us have thought
I'm
about
feeling
it.
much better about it now that I've said it aloud and defended it a
fucking
little bit.
No, I think it's all right.
So how many out of 10 are we giving that?
Oh,
How are
so
we
now-
deciding?
Well,
what's the
we've got to
winner?
go round
Alright,
everyone
first.
first, haven't we?
There is
How are we deciding?
There is
what the
another
winner is?
version of that, because I did think of that as well.
Are you keep? No, hang on. Is this your?
No,
is this
but
your
I know what yours
suggestion?
is. I know what mine are. So I'm not going to spoil it because James might have thought of it. So what's the James?
All right, okay, I'll do mine. So I went with this. I obviously did quite a bit on Twitter and got a few suggestions from people. And the suggestion that kept
That's
coming
what the
back
idea
was the word beaker, and I thought, no, I'm not happy with that. I'm not happy with that. So this is where I've got a feeling that mine might clash a little bit with Adam's because I
doubt you've
gone
got
in
the same
different
as me.
direction. So I thought beaker's not all right. So what about if we make it more specific? And we go down a route of
Bastard.
specific. Sean's just having a minor breakdown in the corner. We'll just carry on. Specifically in terms of the measurement of the drink. So you think of third, half pint. So if we go for beaker, sounds a little bit sort of childlike to me.
Say
So
peacock.
a third.
Not if you spell it like that.
A third would be a theaker, so you would ask for a theaker of something. A half would be a heaker, and a pint would be a peaker.
Okay.
Is this your joint offer?
No.
No, this is just my shit that I've
All right.
come up with. Which, to be fair, was all.
Laura's winning, obviously. so
I mean, I couldn't even come up with anything. So this is all down to people on Twitter. So thank you if you have helped me come up with those three. So
Thank you.
it would rather
Are we
than
doing
say
a
I'll have a
Twitter poll
third
to
of
decide
something,
the winner?
you would just say I'll have a
have
Theaker
options.
of
Does it allow
that
for
cloud
logos?
water or a Peaker of Noah, please. So right, it's probably between you two, isn't it?
Say
Because
that again.
Can I just-
So we would walk to the.
you go to the bar and you just ask for a Peaker of Noah, or you. I mean, that'd be a killer, wouldn't it?
Or a
can I have a Heeker of
or a Heeker.
yeah.
Well, that
Or
relies.
a Theaker of human cannibal, because you don't want a Heeker of that, do you? That'd be
feel this-
nonsense.
I feel
Definitely
this
not a Peaker of human
I feel
cannibal.
this refers on the drink and knowing that you're going to be served your drink in a plastic.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not
Which
going to say I
wouldn't
particularly thought it
necessarily-
through.
We're trying to get
honest,
we're trying to
Laura.
get industry standards so people will just know it eventually.
Yeah, absolutely.
My other one,
It's gotta
which was
start
like
from
similar to Laura's, is the opposite of a Plass, is a glass stick.
Ah.
So it's
Plastic.
Sounds
I
a bit
think
like
Plass
a
is-
trick stick.
I think
Plass is better than glass
yeah.
stick.
And you have to use some glass stick for that, mate, because there's no
It
no glass outside.
sounds like you're going to get a big tuba and
Yeah,
pump it.
We're
pump
allowing
it
away
into
fans. We're
something.
allowing away fans in today,
Right.
but everyone's on
This is
glass stick.
This is home straight. So Sean seemed confident.
Well, I'm not now.
Less so now.
Now you've destroyed my.
I can
idea.
improve that. I can prove yours by.
All right. So we're going to go to Sean next.
Well, I thought
I can
Adam's.
move if you want.
No, I'll go next if you like.
Mine's a bit daft.
I agree with. Is it Laura? I agree with.
That's
no, it's not. It's not Laura.
Is that Laura?
It's James. I agree with. It's James. If you are given
We
a
are very
plastic,
similar.
if you are given a plastic glass, the most appropriate term for that is beaker.
Right.
Beaker. All
Yeah.
right. It's a word that we're all familiar with. We know that that means we are getting a plastic glass. We also know that beaker is what's given to someone that's 2-year-old that wants some raspberry
If
pop.
somebody said
or
me,
strawberry
if somebody
pop.
told me they were giving me a beaker, I'd think it had two handles and a
That's
lid.
it.
Yeah,
You're not
a
gonna-
little
you're not-
teat for you to
That's
drink.
it.
Yeah.
You're not going to spill anything, but obviously you do. It spills all over your little top and everything else in your pram. But I think the word beaker is very recognisable. It involves no marketing campaign. If you say to someone, do you want it in a beaker? You don't have to bloody market it with £1 million marketing campaign to explain what it is. I agree that Plass was very good, Laura. I've forgotten already what James suggested. So I have gone with the word beaker, but I agree that it's very old-fashioned and very infantile in terms of its target audience. So I've changed the spelling of beaker. I've even got a stupid bloody logo which I'm holding up to the
I'm
microphone.
so impressed with the fact you've brought a logo.
I hope I did this last night. And I used it creating Microsoft Word, so the logo is very rushed and not really that pretty.
I like it. It's
the
a
spelling
bit
of
bold,
beaker.
it's modern.
Is B-E-E-K-A beaker. And in my logo I bunged in a little beaker between the K and the A just to express a bit of modernity.
You were going to say
that-
then like
is that
BAAK with the little umlaut.
/
like
underscore
it's-
/
That is exactly what it is. And initially it was just a backslash to give it a modern look. But then I thought, I can create a vessel.
Yes, that's
I
a
can
full
create.
vessel.
I can create a vessel without creating a silly word. Both Deborah and Joanna, my sister works in the shop, thought it may say beak ua, which I disagree with. But if you say it's called beaker, I think it's too far.
Do you think you?
B-E-E-K-A, beaker. So do you want that in a
So
half-pint beaker or a pint beaker?
Do you think you can improve that by putting an R after the double E?
Beaker is what I obviously thought about,
Yeah,
but I don't
beaker.
think it sounded as good.
Sounds a
Beaker.
bit.
Beek. It sounds like it'd be all right for me in town on Wellington Street in Barnsley. Beek. I think internationally, Beek.
We're banning Beekers,
logo separating the K and the A.
So Sean's created an entire brand around his answer. So
Yeah.
Adam, what have you got?
Oh, Monster. So I've got down the same as James.
Monster's a
where,
good
like,
idea.
Obviously, you got your 2/3, which is a school one.
What are you looking at me for?
Because you're
Yeah, two
Am I your biggest competition? Am I your biggest
Well,
competition here?
We should clarify that because there's probably people that don't realise that 2/3 is. It's because it's not so much a south of the border thing. It's generally a Scottish thing that 2/3 is called a school. It's like started off as a Scandinavian thing. It spreads slightly more south. but
Nobody
I don't
calls
think
it 2/3 in UK.
So what do you call
2/3? You call it 2/3.
What do you call something that you take away? What do you take?
I'll have 2/3 of that. 2/3 of a pint. Of
If you were to buy some beer in a pub and you want to take it home, what would you take that home in?
A growler.
A growler.
That's
Nothing
it.
to do with.
That's
yeah.
okay. That's good.
So mine's more on like how you would drink certain things. So we're going for a 1 pint gulper.
A gulper.
Gulper, yeah.
Okay.
A gulper
Yeah, yeah.
is good.
Yeah. So a 2/3, a swagger. Yeah.
That's more a
Yeah, okay.
walk.
Yeah. And then we went to a half, so we went to a swiggle.
A swiggle.
And then
A swiggle sounds good.
If you can try and
A
what
third.
do you reckon a third is?
Twiggle.
No.
Wiggle.
Siplet.
Oh.
A siplet.
I mean,
So-
I don't know about
What a
these
shame.
as vessels,
What a
but
shame.
as replacing the word 1/3 with siplet and half with swiglet.
Yeah.
Swiggle or whatever. whichever.
Swiggle.
It's interchangeable.
I'm totally down for as a measurement rather than a vessel.
Well, that's what I mean.
It's very cute.
It doesn't
Yeah.
mean it doesn't necessarily have to be plastic, but I just wrote them down to try to remember.
So I'm now
gonna
going
say
to
that's
ask
the problem,
Adam.
isn't
I've
it?
taken Adam's phone up. I'm going to ask him to now
Oh,
I feel
say all four again.
a 1 pint gulper,
Look at this serious
a
face.
2/3 swagger, a half
swiggle.
swiggle, and a 1/3 siplet.
I think we should team up and we should offer them in Plasses because a siplet in a Plass.
A Plass siplet.
That sounds
It sounds like we've broke into an episode of the Teletubbies here. We're not even speaking. This is not even English language anymore.
I think they would be ideal for blackcurrant juice.
Because
I agree with you.
Big pint, you're thinking about a bit of a gulp for that. Swag's a bit of a thing. Then you could see like swig, maybe swig and swag's maybe
A
interchangeable.
swig is good, and a
sip and a
what
sip.
was the top one?
Gulper.
Gulper.
1 pint gulper.
The swags.
Swagger is like.
I would say swag could potentially be bigger than a gulp.
Tell you what we're going to do. We're going to put. We're going to put.
You can't
a vote, a poll
full
on
versions.
Twitter. No, it'll just be. It will be each of us. So it'll be
Me and Laura
Laura,
have met the
James,
brief.
Sean, Adam.
One
You
word.
vote for whose take on this you're going to vote for. So you're voting for Hopcast member.
I feel like I talked myself down at the beginning. I stand by mine. I think it's really
It's
good.
very good. I don't think they should vote for Hopcast member. I think it should be a vote for one word for one item. So what would you pick, Adam? You have got an obvious one to win yours.
A swiglet.
A
Swiggle.
swiggle. A
Pick
swiggle.
swiggle. Swiggle's
Yeah.
really good.
Swiggle. What would you pick?
Well, mine's
James?
going to be a Theaker.
Oh well, nobody's going to vote for that.
So it's based on the same as yours.
Should we just drop this off and put next one of mine in, like a siplet?
It's between. Yours is
I-
the same as mine,
I-
but with a TH in front.
If
I'm
we're
just going to
talking-
play. I'm going to play the underdog card here because they're
Oh,
all
yeah,
ganging
yeah,
up on me and
yeah.
bullying me
If
about
we're talking
this.
in terms of an industry standard word, I'm just going to make another plea for mine, the Plass, which could be a glass of
Plass is
a
good.
Plass could be of any size. It could contain any liquid, much as a glass can.
If you log on to the website, you can see the logo for Beek.
Sean wins the effort prize.
I'm very.
Just
all
go to,
all I've done is print
www.
one A4 sheet off of black and white, and that's on draft quality as well. I've not spent anything on ink. In colour, Adam, you've got to make in blue. In Hopcast blue, that would be beautiful.
I thought of Beker, and
In this blue.
I also thought of Plass as well. And,
This could be the rival for the Hopcast half five. We have the Hopcast Beaker, which is Sean and Laura each month just sharing a beer.
Hopcast Beaker means that my name's been selected. Is that what you say?
Well, that's down to the public at large. So we're gonna get that survey on Twitter.
Vote for Laura.
We will we will decide. Well, you will decide over the course of the next month, and we will reveal the winner when we next get together, which will be at the Sheffield Beer Festival, or it will be in the build-up to the Sheffield Beer Festival. We're doing it from the Kelham Island Museum, which is where it is held, just over a month from now. It will be a little bit later in the month than we normally do it, just due to when they're going to have everything set up. We've got to go through the motions here, and we're going to have to pick a beer of the month. I've mentioned that I've got a feeling I might know which is going to win the beer of the night this time around. So rather than actually asking you, I'm just going to go to you and just
pull a face.
If you concur that it is the beer that I think it is, just say yes. Adam?
Yeah.
Laura? Sean?
It is.
Absolutely. Yeah. So it's 4 votes, and
Smell your empty glass.
Without a doubt, Noah from Omnipollo is the beer of the night.
Good luck to everyone that's been to Buxton tonight.
Yeah.
We're very jealous.
But also not that jealous because we've just got bottles of Noah that we didn't have to queue for.
2 hours.
2 hour queues. I hope that's for the bus back home. Bloody hell.
I mean, to be fair, this has been one of the longer hopcasts we've done for a while. You could sort of listen to it and gone for 2 weeks in the time it's taking you to get a
you could have
drink.
stood in the queue, listened to
2
us
hours.
and still been waiting for a beer.
So what you have to do is head to @ChefHopcast on Twitter, cast your vote, and we will reconvene 1 month from now to find out who will be crowned the champion of the plastic vessel, the Great Plastic Vessel Challenge of 2018. We will see you 1 month from now.